what should athletes be looking for?
It really depends on your fueling focus and like what your training block and your training load looks like. Because again, just like everything in nutrition, it's very individualized.
Hello and welcome to the Eat More Carbs podcast. My name is Jenna Fisher and I'm here with my co-host Reilly Beatty. Today, we're going to be talking all about Tart cherry juice. Before we get into the podcast, we're going to do our high and low. So Reilly, can you kick us off?
Yes, high-low is one of the same. I feel like this has been kind of a trend lately, but weather is super nice here down in Charleston. It's lovely right now, except for the low part of this, which is the nice blanket of yellow pollen. I think this has been one of my high lows before, but the pollen situation right now in Charleston is wild. It's coating everything. You have this like false sense of like, oh my gosh, it's so nice out, because you go outside and you're like so excited, and then you're sneezing and coughing and you look like Big Bird because you literally have yellow all over your body.
So the pollen is still going on.
Still going on. I feel like we talked about this like a couple months ago and we're still here.
It does feel like a while ago that you first mentioned that. Well, I'm really sorry. I'm glad the weather is getting nice, but I'm sorry that you guys are dealing with all the pollen still. My high and low for the week. I jokingly told my husband the other day that my low today, when I shared it with you, would be like my low is Wednesday, because we're recording this on a Thursday, because everything just seemed to go not my way yesterday. It kind of started early in the morning, and by the end of the day I was like, I am just so over this. But how I woke up on Wednesday morning maybe contributed to that. I'm not really sure. My husband has a portable speaker. We use it out at the pool. Sometimes he uses it when he's like getting ready. He listens to podcasts, whatever. Anyway, yesterday he left it in our bathroom. He got up before me because our dog George was whining. He goes downstairs. I'm like, I'm going to take a couple minutes to just kind of lay in bed. And all of a sudden, the speaker in our bathroom that he's left there from last night starts playing NBA highlights. So his phone downstairs was still connected to the speaker. And because he didn't know that, he thought that like his phone just wasn't turned on loud enough. So he just kept increasing the volume. So I'm laying in bed and all of a sudden I'm hearing that, Luka scored this 3-point shot at the end of the game. And it's so loud coming from our bathroom. And I can hear him like realizing downstairs that this is what has just happened. So he's like running upstairs to like say sorry and like turn off the speaker. But it was just really kind of a funny way to start my day. And then from there, everything just kind of tumbled downhill and ended in me being like, some days are just like that. So my high today is that I just get to start another day with fresh perspective, that I didn't get woken up by NBA highlights and my dog didn't drag me through the mud. So we're on the up today. That's my high.
I can see Nolan too, like being like, I don't understand why my phone's not working, and like trying to turn it up. And then it's just like gradually getting so much louder, like upstairs.
Yep. And like we've talked about before, my bathroom does a lot of echoing. So it's just like echoing and loud from all of this NBA highlights that my husband is unknowingly just sharing with me in the morning.
At least it was NBA highlights. Could be something worse.
That's true, right?
In today's episode, like Jenna mentioned, we are going to be diving into Tart cherry juice, concentrate capsules, talking about the supplement, which is something that we recommend to a lot of the athletes and clients that we work with. If you are somebody who is interested in working with us one-on-one, we are currently accepting new clients, whether that is in one of our monthly reoccurring programs, if you're somebody who needs a little bit more accountability and support. And we're also accepting clients in our one-on-one initial consults, where you would meet with a performance dietitian at RBSN and then also get an individual program. We will leave the link below so you can sign up and start working with us today. We're really excited to talk about today's Tart cherry topic because it is something that we talk about all the time with the athletes and clients that we work with. And it's something that I personally did a lot of research on when I was in my master's program. So before we kind of dive into its benefits for athletes and other individuals, Jenna, like what is Tart cherry? Like what is Tart cherry juice concentrate? It's super popular right now, like on TikTok, Instagram, but what is it?
I'm so glad you asked that, because previously when I wasn't working in the space of athletics, Tart cherry is not really something that dietitians talk a ton about. So I'm really excited to kind of chat with you about your knowledge about it. But Tart cherry juice is derived from tart cherries, which generally are known to have a slightly sour taste. It's gained a lot of popularity among among athletes due to the fact that it has potential benefits when it comes to recovery, inflammation. And then there's also some things that sometimes talk about a little bit of sleep improvement. And I'm really hopeful that we'll kind of chat a little bit more about that. But athletes are always kind of seeking ways to optimize their performance, and Tart Cherry Juice is offering a lot of promising results in the world of sports nutrition.
We are totally a food first podcast, but it is one of the supplements out there that I've found with athletes that you can almost get like an instant result from it if you utilize it properly, which we're always talking about. Like, it depends and every situation is different, but it is pretty wild to see athletes and just regular individuals, active adults, using this product and getting pretty good results from it.
So you mentioned good results, but you've actually done a lot of research on Tart Cherry Juice supplementation. So I'd love for you to chat a little bit about that. Like, from your experience, what were some of the most like compelling research findings, like in regards to those benefits you just talked about for sports performance and recovery?
With supplements and like ergogenic aids, the marketing and like the hype is often really ahead of the research. When I was working on my master's project a couple years ago, and even now, I felt like it was like a lot of myth busting. Like, we're doing a lot of research to be like, okay, these popular claims that we're seeing on social media, like, are these actually real? You know, is the hype real with this product? What was really interesting that I found was even 5 to 7 years ago, we were still talking about like the same myths and things that we are talking about today. One of the big myths that I had going into doing the research was, like you mentioned, it helps with sleep because it contains a lot of melatonin. Tart cherries do not actually contain a lot of melatonin. There is a lot of research that supports like melatonin presence like in the urine after consuming tart cherry products. So it is helping with endogenous melatonin production, but we're not actually getting melatonin from the tart cherry products unless there's a product that is tart cherries and melatonin, which we are seeing a lot of those products like now in 2024. So I think that was something that was really eye-opening to me, kind of diving into that research in the beginning.
That's so interesting that you bring that up, because we're seeing so many like Sleepy Girl mocktails on social media with people making tart cherry juice mixed with maybe like a bubble water or something like that to help with sleep. So is there any benefit to taking a Sleepy Girl mocktail when it comes to helping improve your sleep?
So yes, I do think that there is research that supports tart cherry products for sleep quality and sleep maybe quantity. What I found when, again, this was a couple years ago, but what I found when I was doing my research was the time, it's like called sleep latency. So the time that you fall asleep after hitting your pillow was faster with tart cherry products. With this though, right, again, the hype often precedes the research and the data. If you have like a tablespoon of tart cherry juice like in your bubble juice, is that gonna maybe work? Probably not, because we also have to really look at like the dosing with the tart cherry products to make sure that the dosing is actually giving us the clinical result. A lot of the performance benefits, a lot of the sleep benefits are coming with consumption of like, I would say minimum 50 cherries in a single dosage. So if you're somebody who's like, I'm gonna sprinkle some tart cherry juice, I think, to kind of give a quick example, I think about like when you go to brunch and you like put like a tablespoon of orange juice in your mimosa, right? Like, if you're doing that with your tart cherry juice and your bubble water, like, that's not going to actually have any type of effect that you're trying to go for. You have to have, 50 plus cherries to get those results.
50 plus cherries, when you translate that over to how much juice you're drinking, is that about like 8 ounces of juice? What does that look like when you're taking it in juice form versus eating the cherries?
That's a great question. The research supports like 8 to 12 fluid ounces of a pure tart cherry juice, 1 ounce of a concentrate, or 480 milligrams if you're taking it in capsule form.
Okay, so there are different ways to take your tart cherry. What are the differences between those things? Like, what's the difference between a tart cherry juice and a tart cherry concentrate?
So a concentrate is just something that is much more concentrated, right? Like, it's something that has been
basically condensed, right? Like, they've taken the tart cherry juice and condensed it so that way there's not as much volume, which might be beneficial for someone who's worried about consuming too much liquid like later in the evening and then waking up to use the restroom because they've had a lot to drink right before bed. So definitely benefits from that standpoint. But are there benefits from the results or benefits that we see from performance and recovery to taking those different forms, or is it all about the same if you're to take concentrate versus juice versus a capsule?
Research supports that you get very similar results. And that was actually what my project looked looked at was like looking at concentrate versus juice versus a capsule. And again, like I just had a basic research study, like nothing was published from it or anything like that, but it was looking at these 3 dosings of it. When you look at the research, similar results are across kind of all 3 of these categories, at least from what I've currently seen. Depending on athlete preference, like that's often when I recommend a certain product over another product. Like I love the capsules for travel. Those are great. They're not going to spill in the bag. They're much smaller. Also for somebody who is like, we work with a lot of combat sports. So an athlete that might be traveling who's under like a certain energy consumption restriction, a capsule might be a better option. Some athletes don't like the taste of the juice. So that's an option. You could do a concentrate. The concentrate is pretty strong, or you could do a capsule if you don't like the taste preference. Something to be mindful though is all of the juices are not made the same. So you really have to be careful on like the products that you're consuming, because since tart cherry juice is not always the easiest juice to drink, it's often mixed with apple juice or something that's sweeter. And that's great. We love that because we're getting compliance with the consumption, but we're also getting less cherries from that. So we'd have to drink more to meet that like 50 cherry threshold.
Which makes total sense. When you see some of the juice options at most supermarkets, it might be like cherry mixed with cranberry or something like that. But when you go into like a Trader Joe's and they have the 100% tart cherry juice, if you look at that as far as ingredients compared to that ocean spray, again, fueling focus might be different if we're including cran cherry juice or whatever it is into our fueling plan versus a tart cherry juice, but there's a difference there. So in order to get those benefits, it would be a different amount. It means different things.
Yep. Also, when you go into a Trader Joe's too, you're not going to get a tart cherry or just any type of juice product that's going to be like, there's 55 cherries in here. Usually about 100 to 120 calories of a pure tart cherry juice is going to have about 50 cherries.
So really looking at that food label and saying, how much of this do I need to drink to get that amount of calories from it? If it's a pure tart cherry juice, will equal roughly 50 cherries.
Yep. There's sport products out there. There are specific brands that are like sport product specific that list the amount of cherries on there. Not all of them have 50 cherries in there. So that's something that you want to look out for as well. You can use those products as a guide when you're at the grocery store.
I definitely want to ask about some of your favorite products or some of your favorite brands maybe that you recommend, but I also really want to talk about the side of performance and recovery, which I feel like is maybe more what you might be recommending tart cherry juice for versus improved sleep. So what does that look like? How does that help?
So there's so many different like phytochemicals in tart cherry products. Yes, we talk about tart cherry for athletics, but it has a huge anti-inflammatory benefit. And the other area that a lot of people are doing research in, actually just as a side note, is like rheumatoid arthritis because of that anti-inflammatory property that the product has. So we do see, a lot of benefits with recovery, obviously sleep, and just like less soreness, lower RPEs with tart cherry juice usage.
So basically there's a handful of benefits that come along from utilizing tart cherry juice for athletes, but also maybe potentially non-athletes as well.
I do think it's important though to mention that too much of anything is a bad thing. So when we're utilizing tart cherry products, we do need to be mindful, because if we're just taking them every single day, we could blunt the body's like natural anti-inflammatory response or that exercise adaptation. So again, like working with a sports dietitian to kind of work on your timing with the tart cherry products is something that could be really beneficial.
So for athletes who are listening to this podcast and are feeling inclined to maybe start taking tart cherry juice or working it into their fueling plan, what advice or what tips do you have for them? I know you just mentioned we maybe don't need to take it daily to see the benefits. So how often should we be using it? When should we be using it? What should athletes be looking for?
It really depends on your fueling focus and like what your training block and your training load looks like, because again, just like everything in nutrition, it's very individualized. But some kind of general guidelines to get started is if you maybe have a competition in a couple of days, let's say you have a big game on Saturday, I would probably start taking it on Wednesday evening, like take it a couple of days before to kind of decrease inflammation going into that big event. I would take it on Wednesday or Thursday. I would take it at night. And then on Friday, I would take it immediately after training. The reasoning behind this is because on Wednesday or Thursday, you want some of that like adaptation, that inflammation, that response from exercise to still be available. So you would allow that adaptation to occur, but then you're also getting those anti-inflammatory benefits by taking it away from training, helping your body kind of refresh. So I would take it at night on a Wednesday or a Thursday. And then on a Friday, right before your game, the day before your game, I would take it immediately after training because we want to kickstart that recovery process as soon as possible.
So even if training is maybe mid-afternoon, is there any potential impact as far as from a sleep standpoint or making you too sleepy when it comes to taking it like in the middle of the afternoon? Is that anything that we know about?
So athletes do report that happening, but everybody, again, is a little bit different. Some people are not affected by it at all, making it super sleepy or anything like that. But again, if you want to be safe and you don't want to be sleeping in the afternoon, you can always take it before you go to bed.
We're in the middle of the NBA finals, kind of like my low implied is that we're seeing that right now. And I know that a lot of the NBA dietitians or staff team dietitians are recommending tart cherry juice for those athletes. So I know obviously it depends for each player and each dietitian's recommendations might be a little bit different. But if you were in the shoes of a dietitian working alongside the NBA, how would you help them navigate their intake of tart cherry with these back-to-back games, knowing that if we take it for a prolonged period of time, we might not get as much of a benefit?
So I would definitely have them be taking it like after games right now, because yes, prolonged period of time, we're talking about months at a time, right? The postseason for the NBA is something that goes on a couple weeks. There's a lot of games, but having these athletes, consistently take it during the postseason isn't going to be something that's going to like maybe hinder that exercise response. And we've talked with so many people. I mean, we talked with Jessie about this for NC State going to the men's Final Four, where she was practicing so many of her fueling protocols that she was implementing during the postseason for the entire season. And that's what these NBA dietitians are doing as well. So they're, building out these protocols and things like that so they can easily implement some of these things like tart cherry juice and things like that during the postseason.
These things like tart cherry juice, some of those other protocols that Jessie mentioned, that was a lot of what we like to kind of call extra credit. That's a steal from the physical therapist Nate that we had on. When we don't have a good fueling foundation, if we're just trying all of these extra credit pieces, it doesn't really work to our benefit in the same way. So if you're an athlete and you're hoping to kind of improve your fueling foundation, work a little bit more on that side of things, you can get our athlete meal planner, which can help set that up for success. And then we can start adding some of those extra credit pieces on top of that. Are there any other like potential interactions or things that clients or athletes should be aware of when incorporating tart cherry juice into their fuel plan? Like, does it fit into hydration? Does it contribute to your hydration? Does it not? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, if you're drinking the juice, like that contributes to hydration. It's also going to be contributing to carbohydrates. I love some liquid fuel. We talk about that all the time, especially, for these athletes, maybe these NBA athletes who finish up at 11 o'clock at night. Having the tart cherry juice is going to provide that anti-inflammatory effect, but it's also helps with rehydration. It's going to help with glycogen replenishment. Implementing it as a source of liquid calories is another great way to utilize it.
So we can see tart cherry juice from the benefit of helping with inflammation, helping with carbohydrate intake, helping with hydration, helping with some sleep side effects too. So there's a number of things depending on what your fueling focus is that utilizing some tart cherry juice or utilizing a, Sleepy Girl mocktail, it's a great thing to maybe be using depending on what your fueling focus is.
Yes, definitely. And especially too, with all the travel that the NBA athletes are doing right now, it's going to help you sleep with that time change.
A lot of the things that you've been saying when it comes to tart cherry juice is that, yes, it can be extremely beneficial from a number of different aspects, but the real important piece of fueling, like we've talked about so many times, is having that good fueling foundation. We can't expect that immediate benefit, that immediate response from incorporating tart cherry juice into our fueling plan if we don't have that positive relationship with food, that good fueling foundation already set up.
And I think that goes for any type of supplement or ergogenic aid as well.
Ergogenic aid. What does that mean?
So ergogenic aids are anything that we're taking or athletes are taking to help advance or enhance performance. So when we look at popular products out there, obviously tart cherry juice, that's what we were just talking about today, is one of them. Other popular ones out there are going to be like creatine, caffeine, collagen. We have an episode that we'll link below on collagen, which is another aid, protein powder, multivitamins, anything that an athlete is taking in order to enhance performance.
What are your final thoughts on tart cherry juice? Is it RBSN approved? Is it something we recommend? I know we already kind of gave that away by saying that we do recommend it often, but closing thoughts on tart cherry juice supplementation.
I think it's RBSN approved, definitely. We recommend it all the time, but it's something that we recommend after having a strong fueling foundation, and then ensuring that you are taking the right product with the right dosing is also really important.
What are your top favorite brands to recommend?
So I really like Now Foods has a tart cherry capsule. It's a recovery capsule. It's called R&R, but it also is going to have tart cherry juice, melatonin, and a couple other recovery products in that capsule as well. Cherry Bundy is kind of what people go to in sports for having a variety of different products in their line. And then I also really like the tart cherry juice from Trader Joe's. It's 100% tart cherry juice, and it is a third or even a fourth of the price of the Cherry Bundy line.
That's the one I always get. As we know, I love Trader Joe's, but because of the price point on that one and because Trader Joe's is close to where I live, that one's super convenient for me. RBSN also has a blog post about specific tart cherry supplementation, which has links to all of those things that you just mentioned, from the Now Foods all the way to the Cherry Bundy. So we will also link that in the show notes too, so that way you can have a summary of the things that we just talked about from a tart cherry supplement standpoint, and then also have the direct links to the things that Reilly just mentioned. Reilly, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge on tart cherry. Thanks for doing some research on it too, so we have an even better understanding of tart cherry, how it works, and how we should be utilizing it. If you have questions for Reilly and I, you can always leave them below, or you can find us on Instagram or at the Eat More Carbs podcast. You can find Reilly on Instagram at reilly.beatty.nutrition, and you can find me at jenna.fisher.nutrition. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Eat More Carbs podcast. Please make sure you rate, subscribe, and review. And as always, remember to eat more carbs.